Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. And this is the second video in our mathematical modeling video series. If you haven't seen the first one, I'll leave a link right here. Today we're going to be actually discussing our very first model in this video series. But before we do that, let's just take a quick look at what we did last week. So the important aspects of whatever we discussed last week are as follows. So when we talked about how you get started with mathematical modeling, we said the first thing to do is to understand the problem, right? So that essentially means understanding what domain the problem is from, having some better understanding of that domain so that you can understand the various aspects of the problem, as in how it came about, what we're trying to solve, can it actually be solved, and so on and so forth. Now, other than that, the second thing that we discussed was about actually making the right assumptions. So to make the right assumptions, we obviously need to know more about the problem, right? We need to understand, again, like I said, what assumptions will help us reach the right goals. Too many assumptions will make it a very specific problem, which is not of use to us. Too few assumptions might make it extremely difficult for us to solve. And the third thing we spoke about was using the right tools, the right modeling tools. And that essentially refers to using the right structures, like maybe differential equations, difference equations, and even in differential equations, there are various kinds of differential equations. So yeah, we'll discuss about that later in this lecture. And now the last and the most important thing is coming up with the best conclusions and strategies. This is where the whole model comes to light, right? So if our model is good, but we're not able to draw the right conclusions, or if you're not able to use the results well, then our whole model goes to waste. So this is the most important step in my aspect, apart from understanding the problem and making the right assumptions. So I'm going to just give you a quick idea about the way you can classify mathematical models, because this is another important thing to keep in mind while choosing how to model. That's choosing the right tools, right? The third point which I just spoke about. So models can be deterministic or stochastic in nature. So to give you a very quick and easy example, right? So if I had to walk from, let's say, my house to the grocery shop, and there's only one next to my house, let's say, and I were not considering any environmental factors. The only thing I were factoring in is how many people there were at the store. So if I were trying to model how long it took for me to go to the store and come back, the only factor that would really affect me were the number of people in the store. That's it. So as the number of people are higher, I'd probably take longer to go and come back, right? So if you see here, there is no probability that I have incorporated into my problem definition, right? It's a deterministic thing. There are more people, more time. That's it. Now, if I were to take the exact same example, but if I were to change it a bit, so let's say I were also to add a few factors, like not just not just the amount of people in the store, but also where they are, right? They could be a large number of people in the store, but only a small percentage of them are actually in the billing counter, right? And that percentage is, let's say, a probabilistic thing. Let's say it depends on the time at which I am actually reaching the store. So maybe in the morning, there's a higher probability of more people being there. In the afternoon, less probability. In the evening, more probability, and so on and so forth. So if you see here what I did, the very same problem, I added a probabilistic nature to it, something that depends on probability, something that's not definite, something that's not deterministic, something that can change and has different probabilities of occurring at different times or different instances. So the reason I gave this example is, in the first case, I can use a deterministic model. I don't need to incorporate any probability into it. So it's a very fixed thing, right? So a deterministic model always gives the same output. So a deterministic model always gives the same output if start value is same, is not, instead of saying same, I guess I can say fixed. So what I mean by this is, if the number of people in the store are, let's say 10 before I reach, right? 10 people in the store before I reach, then my model, the deterministic model of how long it takes for me to go to the store and come back, will always give me the same value. It will always tell me the exact same number as how long it took for me to go to the store and come back, as long as the initial number of people in the store is fixed. If the only way I can get different outputs is if this initial value changes to, let's say 11, 12, whatever it may be. But there is no other way in which I can get a different output. So that makes my model deterministic. It's determined only by the initial value. So I'm just giving an initial value, which is 10. So in my particular example, the only way this deterministic model changes is if the initial value changes. Cool. So now for the stochastic model, right? If I were to go at different times or different instances in the day, like I said, the probability of people being there are different. Correct. So it not just depends on the total number of people in the store, it also depends on the time at which I go to the store. So this has more probability involved in it. And to give you another example, so let's say Google Maps, right? So you're on Google Maps, you've put point A and point B. So your destination and your start point, you've put both of them. And if you check and there are multiple routes, what Google Map actually does is it tries to calculate based on the current trend of traffic in different areas. As you start going, it tries to see the probability of traffic occurring in different routes and blocks and so on and so forth, and suggests the best route to you. So there also a stochastic model is being used, in that it picks the model with the highest chance of you reaching fastest based on the fact that there are some probabilistic features, like the probability that traffic will be high in certain areas and so on and so forth. So these are roughly the two different kinds of models. Okay, so the next form of classification that we can talk about is high level and low level. And what does this mean? So let's say we are modeling at the level of human beings, right? So that's one level. If we go a level further inside a particular human being, we can model in terms of cells. If we go further lower, we can model in terms of molecules and so on and so forth, atoms and so on and so forth. So essentially the depth at which you're dealing with the problem is nothing but the level of the problem, and that's one way in which you can consider. So for example, if I were dealing with human beings as a whole, let's say I was modeling the number of people traveling from Bangalore to Chennai, then there's no point of actually incorporating molecules or cells into this model, right? That's just stupid. So it's very important for you to understand the level at which you're dealing with the problem, and that in turn forms different kinds of models and different aspects you have to keep in mind while modeling different levels or layers of abstraction. So now just a quick reminder on the exact stages involved in modeling. So I'd say these are the 4 stages involved in modeling, right? And if I were to draw a small flowchart as I go through the points. So let's say we get data, and then we model, we build the model. After that, we test the model, right? We test if the model works, and then we get results. And if the results are not satisfactory, so for example, let's say we got some results, but we don't think from our prior knowledge about the field that those results are right. If that's the case, then what happens is basically we have to go back to the model and change some aspects of the model. So then from here, again, we go back. So it's essentially nothing but an iterative process is what I'm trying to say. So it's very difficult for you to get the model right on the very first time. But that being said, If you do, great. If you don't, you can always come back and change some assumptions you made, some variables you included, and so on and so forth. And we'll understand this as we go along in this video series, because we will start from the very basic model and we'll see how you can make improvements to that and stuff. And we'll in fact see that today in the example in our very first model that we deal with. So I hope this is clear. This is just a self-explanatory slide pretty much. So yeah, go through it and I hope you get the rough idea of what I'm trying to say, that modeling is iterative. So we're going to understand our very first model. So to understand the model, or to deal with our first model, we have to understand the level of detail to be included in the model, and we have to understand factors that lie within the scope of the model. And this again brings me back to the fact that if I'm talking about humans as a whole, there's no point about talking about cells, right? It's out of the scope. So if I'm talking about, so let's say with respect to this point, if I'm talking about humans, then cells are just like, it has no meaning. And with respect to this, the most important thing, right? So you have to understand that, like I said, it's very important. A, we understood the problem. Now we have a problem. Second thing is making assumptions. And by making assumptions, that's when you actually determine the level of detail you're going to be including in the model, right? So I may be neglecting some factors. So I'm losing some level of detail, and that's okay. But it's important for you to establish that at the very beginning, so that once you reach your results, like I was explaining in the previous slide. So once you reach your results and then you realize that, oh, okay, maybe my results are not good enough, you can come back to the model and change some of these assumptions that you essentially made. So that's what I was trying to explain. Cool. So now we're going to deal with the population growth model. And I'm sure that each and every one of us have read this somewhere or the other, right? Like we would have come across the statement that says the world's population is growing at an exponential rate. Now, have you ever thought about why that's true? And if it's actually true, right? So the reason why this is a very popular statement is what we'll be discussing today through a mathematical model. So how are we going to do that? So like I said, the very first thing to do is to understand the assumption that was made. So in today's lecture, we are not going to be modeling something by ourselves. I'm going to be giving you the model that exists for population growth. And at the end of this lecture, I'm going to pose a problem to you, and you guys can try and forming the model by yourself. And in the beginning of the next lecture, the first thing I'll do is give you my solution to that mathematical model, and we'll have a discussion about it. So in population studies, which is a very important and popular field, they had made this model many years back about how the population in the world is growing, right? And if you read any famous documentation that people from the field of population studies have published, you will see that in the 20th century and maybe even before that, when resources were not an issue, they always considered that there were no limiting factors to human beings expanding. And what I mean by that is they never ever considered the possibility that we may run out of resources, or there may not be enough resources for everybody, right? So that is the very important thing, or the very important assumption that was made while making this mathematical model. So by limiting factors here, what I mean is there is food for everyone, there are houses for everyone, there is going to be no shortage of any resource that a human needs to live a comfortable life, right? So with these assumptions, the very famous and most important model in terms of population growth that was made was that the rate of change of the population is nothing but, maybe I should use a different color so that you can see better. We'll use red. Okay, so the rate of change of the population is proportional to the population. This is essentially what this model says, right? So P here, or P of t, if I were to be specific, essentially tells us or denotes the population size at the time t. So what I'm saying is the rate of change of the population size is proportional to the population size. And that makes sense if you think about it. If there are more people, it's likely that those people can give birth to more people, right? So if there were only 5 people as against 10, 10 people can give birth to more people than 5 people can. That's the rough and very crude idea behind this model. And of course, under the assumption that there are no limiting factors to the human population. So now this is the mathematical model, but what do we get from this? So we have seen the problem. The problem is about population of the world. We've understood where we were dealing with it. This is not in today's scenario as such. It was some time back when there were no limiting factors, which is the assumption. So we have understood the problem, we have understood the assumption. And we have used a particular mathematical tool, which in this case is an ordinary differential equation. And just a disclaimer, if there are people here who don't know what differential equations are, or if you're confused about it, I'll be making a very short video on it pretty soon. So just check back on my channel regularly and you will see that I've made some short videos on differential equations and a few other things that will help you in this mathematical modeling video series. But for now, just think of this differential equation as nothing but the rate of change, right? So yeah, so we picked the right mathematical tool as well. So the next thing to do is actually to solve the mathematical model. And to do that, what we're going to do essentially is solve this differential equation. So the solution of this differential equation, so I had dp by dt is equal to k times p. So when I solve it, this is what I get. So I'm just going to write it down here. P of t is equal to p of 0 into e power a t. So if you guys can notice here in the term in the solution, we have an exponential term. That's one thing to notice. The second thing you might ask is what is P of 0? So P of 0 is essentially the initial population. And what I mean by initial population is that from the time at which, so let's say we were considering the population growth from the year, say 1885. So this is t equal to 0. And in that scenario, 1887 would be t equal to 2. Right? This is the time t equal to 0 and this would be t equal to 2. Now I want to stress on a few important things here, which I will deal with great detail in the coming slides, but I just want to stress on some things. One, the important thing for you to notice here is that this model is deterministic and it's not a stochastic model because there's no probability involved, right? What it says is that if the population is higher at the start, then at a later time, the population will be proportional to it. That's it. Simple. So if P of 0 is higher, P of t will also be higher. That's pretty much it. So it's a deterministic model. The second thing and the more important thing to notice here is that this is a continuous time problem. What I mean by that is between 0 to 2, I have not only t equal to 1, but I have all possible time instances. I can take any fractional value or any decimal value as well. If I were to calculate p of 0.257, so that means 0.257 years after the start of 1855. This model can actually give you that value. So it's a continuous time model. It's not in discrete steps. So it's not just t equal to 0, t equal to 1 and t equal to 2. It includes all time instances between them. So to conclude, this is a deterministic, continuous mathematical model that gives you population growth. And now about our statement, which I said that the population is growing at an exponential rate, and now it's pretty obvious to everybody who's watching this that it's because of this exponential term that famous statement has been made, that the population is growing at an exponential rate. Of course, this model was made under the assumption that there are no limiting factors. Cool. So now we're getting a rough idea of the model. So now let's just think about this model a bit more. So if I were to draw a graph, let's say this is t, which is time, and this is p of t, which is the population. So let's say this is at t equal to 0, this is p of 0, this point is p of 0, right? So now the thing to notice here is that our solution p of t was p of 0 e power a t. So it starts, so if I were to plot this graph, at t equal to 0, it's here, and the exponential curve essentially means that it grows at an exponential rate, which means it's not linear. Linear is a straight line. So the slope has to be much higher than that. So it will be something like, that's something like this, right? So it's growing exponentially. The population is growing so high. So the rate, so if I were to take, let's say this is some t1, and let's say some t2. So the growth rate from t equal to 0 and t equal to 1, if we were to compare that from t equal to 1, t1 to t2, we'd notice that from t1 to t2, the growth is so much faster and so much steeper than between t0 and t1. And that is the characteristic of the exponential graph itself. So again, we're seeing that the population grows at an exponential rate was in fact a statement that was made from this particular mathematical model which describes population growth, which again, like I said, was made in the early days when there were no resource crunches. But if you look at today's scenario, in today's world, the population growth is no longer exponential. Like you can see it from any country's growth. Like China had a exponential population growth in their earlier years, right, in the 20th century and stuff. And if you see, they found out and they figured out that that was a problem. So they made some policy decisions, right? They saw this graph, they understood, oh man, the population is increasing at such a high rate, and this is not a sustainable thing. So they had the results, which are these graphs, and what strategy did they come up with? China in specific came up with the one-child policy and so many other things, right, after that. So that's just an example of how you can use the results and come up with policies and strategies that help you solve the problem. Cool. So we have come from an end-to-end mathematical model, from the problem statement, understanding it, solving it, and making assumptions, everything, and coming up with some conclusions and some policy decisions. Now, a few important things to note here. First thing, which I haven't spoken about till now and you probably are confused about, is what is this A? So if I were to just go back to the slide. So what is this A over here? So I've used K and A interchangeably, if you can notice. So I've used K here and K here, and if I go ahead, basically you can see that my solution is this. So that's nothing but K and A are the same. That's what I'm trying to make. The point I'm trying to make here is that K and A are in fact the same constant. I just used it interchangeably. So I hope that does not cause any confusion. If you are confused, I hope it cleared your confusion. But more importantly, what is that constant? I can denote it by any letter, that doesn't matter. But what does it mean to us? What does it actually mean? So in some literature, this is actually called the population growth rate, right? It's the rate at which the exponential increase is happening. So if, what I mean to say is, so if I have e power, let's say kt, no, let's just stick to a so that there's no confusion. So let's say if I have e power at, and let's say I have e power ct and a is not equal to c, okay, just to be clear. So now the a and c here gives you the rate at which the exponential curve is either growing or decaying. So if a and c are negative, it will be decaying. If a and t are positive, it will be growing. Now, the thing is, the important thing to understand is that if A is higher, if this A or C, so let's say A is higher than C. If A is higher than C, then E power AT is growing at a faster rate than E power CT. So the rate at which the population will grow in let's say country 1 has a population has a growth rate of A, country 2 has growth rate of C. Then country 1 will in fact grow at a much faster rate. Its population will grow at a much faster rate than country 2. That's an important thing to visualize and understand. Now, in some other literature, especially in more recent times, this constant A has been defined as the difference of birth rate and death rate. So I use B for birth rate, I use D for death rate. Cool. So in more modern literature, this is the way in which this constant has been defined. So if you think about it, it makes sense, right? So if A has to be called the population growth rate, a population growth rate can be defined as simply the difference in the birth rate and the death rate of the country. And if you think about it, these birth rates and death rates are due to natural factors only, not due to a pandemic like COVID or due to a random disease that suddenly comes up in a particular country or stuff like that. So these birth rates and death rates are also termed as natural birth rate and natural death rate. These are just some terminologies, and if you don't remember it, it's of no problem because I will be dealing with it in detail in the following lectures. I just wanted to give you an intuitive understanding of what that constant A actually meant. Now, if we were to go ahead and ask a very important question, which, if you remember from my flowchart, is okay, are the results meaningful? So those results were meaningful back in the day, but today it doesn't make that much sense, right? So can I make the model better? And this is a very important question to answer. So, like I said, I'm going to leave you guys with a question of how you can make this population growth rate model better. What changes can you make? What assumptions can you make? What changes in the way we modeled? Is there any change we can make? These are all questions that you can think about, and I will answer this in the beginning of the next lecture. But I will leave you with a hint. So the hint is essentially that if you think about it, the biggest difference between back in the day and today is that today there is a resource crunch. We don't have infinite resources for everybody. We don't have enough resources to make sure that everybody survives. There is a limit or a cap to our population capacity, like the capacity or the density of our population is limited. So we can't just assume that, yeah, okay, like we can just let the population grow, and that's not happening, in fact, right? That's why people have taken measures to prevent the population from growing. So if you're able to answer this one question, how can I model that effect? How can I model the effect of there being a resource crunch? Then you will essentially end up with a much better mathematical model for population growth in today's scenario. So I'm going to leave you with this question. So can the model be made better? If so, how? I gave you a hint. Think of how you can model a limiting effect. So the assumption before was there was no limiting factors. Now there are. So how can you model that? How can you incorporate that into a mathematical model? Okay, I hope you enjoyed this lecture. I'll see you next time. Please make sure you subscribe to my channel so that you can get notified every time I put up a video. I'm also going to be making a set of short videos which will help those of you who are out of touch or don't know some mathematical tools like differential equations, difference equations, and so on and so forth, so that you can understand my video series better. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.